Deepwoken players are wrong about verse 3. I've seen a lot of people saying things that I just can't corroborate, confirm, endorse, authenticate, verify, or even potentially believe in. And in today's video, I wanted to cover some of the things that you guys are saying about verse 3 and disproving or explaining certain aspects in more detail, because a lot of people are making, quite bluntly, dumb remarks in regard to the recent verse 3 announcements. And before we get into it, I'm live on Twitch, come watch me on Twitch. I'm live on Twitch right now as of uploading this video, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Mondays, Wednesdays, and some Fridays. I am live on Twitch right now, so you're gonna come watch my stream or you're fake and I hate you. Just kidding. Anyway, make sure to subscribe and let's get straight into it. Alright, so it seems like a lot of people, first of all, just think that the devs are lying about this because of what happened with Conquest, with multiple people being very pessimistic in my last video's comment section stating that they don't believe verse 3 and layer 3 are coming and that the devs are no longer reliable, but like, this isn't Conquest, okay? This is layer 3, something the devs literally can't lie about or they ruin their reputation basically forever. Layer 3 cannot be compared to Conquest, and the reasons why Conquest didn't work out are completely different to the conditions that layer 3 is under. First of all, Conquest wasn't wanted by the community. The devs started working on Conquest out of their own desire rather than the community's wishes, which is basically why they did the community poll for what we wanted next, and, you know, they just didn't put anything that we actually wanted majorly in it, right? It's why that in that poll, we don't see anything like PvE updates or layer 3, with the only real major thing in lore being world events, which was the thing that won, right? The devs know that the next layer of the devs will always be the #1 most requested thing of them, so they don't bother polling the community in any relation to it. It's also why they purposely made the other options in the poll being world events, and I forget what the other one was, but they made them sound less exciting when talking about all three of them and gave the most details on Conquest specifically. It's also why the devs worked on Conquest despite world events winning the poll. It was rigged from the start. They wanted Conquest to be what won the poll, and they wanted the community to want it so that way they could have more incentive to do it. But nobody really wanted Conquest except for the devs, which is why they went ahead and worked on it on their own time. And over time, their vision of Conquest changed, making it fit Deepwoken less and less, which is why it never ended up getting completed, and to this day, or at least as far as our knowledge goes, is basically scrapped at this point. The devs wanted to rig the polls, and it didn't work out for them, so now we don't have Conquest anyway. Layer 3 meets none of these negatives, alright? The community wants Layer 3. Everything about Layer 3 is good. PvE content, lore, those are literally the top two things in Deepwoken. The devs already have visions for Layer 3 written through the lore in-game, and there's no way the image of Layer 3 can't fit in-game because it's just a big part of what Deepwoken is, and there's a lot of lore surrounding it and important stuff that goes into it. Conquest was doomed from the start because the concept itself is flawed within Deepwoken. Layer 3 isn't. Deepwoken is, well, at least was initially supposed to be envisioned as a PvE and lore-based game where the world would change around you and most of what you would do is PvE. Over time, this vision has warped as the devs became more and more exceedingly focused on the PvP side of the community, but it really doesn't matter, right? Conquest doesn't work, Layer 3 will always work. And it's crazy because I've been seeing people leave comments like, why can't we just let this game die already and move on to the next project? Deepwoken's beyond saving. What the fuck do you mean Deepwoken's beyond saving? Type Soul wasn't beyond saving, and that game literally had an average of 0 players for a 3-month span while it was still open. That's just such a stupid fucking point to make, being awfully pessimistic about quite literally the most anticipated Deepwoken update ever, which I think personally will beat out verse 2 numbers. I could be wrong about this, a lot of people might not come back for layer 3, but I think the update will easily be better than layer 2. And by the way, someone in the last video complained that I curse too much, so I'm trying to tone it down, but that was one F word, and one F word still lands me in the PG-13 ratings, so I get 1 per video. But I genuinely can't believe how hard some people have switched up just because the game's been dry recently, to the point where some of you guys genuinely think the devs could be lying about layer 3, or you think that the game should just die. And before someone within the age range of 14 to 16 comments something dumb like, can't wait to see this age horribly, shut the fuck up. That's 2 F words, by the way. That is the hard limit for PG-13. Look, if there's one thing I know the devs wouldn't do, it's spending money on graphics without having an actual plan set in stone for potential releases. This stuff is coming. At least the major stuff is. So let me just read another quick comment, or a few comments that I think were honestly kind of dumb. Now the first one is, typical politician speech. I'd bet all of my slots that they're just going to scrap all of these updates and go back to making PvP slop. Are we for real? Like, genuinely. Why? I can't even, like, imagine thinking of, like, how you think the devs could scrap all of these updates. And yeah, they could, but if they do, then they just lose millions of people's support in an instant for doing that, and that's just not worth it. That's literally just not worth it from any standpoint, okay? I don't see why they would. I don't see how they could, like, from any logical standpoint. And you're saying, oh yeah, they might go back to making PvP slop. Which, yeah, after these updates are out, yeah, they probably will go back to just random PvP updates and stuff like that, involving balancing and all that. But you really think they're just going to scrap everything that they released in a roadmap? They have not given us a roadmap since Verse 2, and Verse 2 is out. Anyway, another person said, this is a bit of a longer one, but, and I quote, "Deepwoken is never coming back. Finally showing us a roadmap after 4 years of radio silence is not a good sign. They're trying to save face and pick up whatever pieces are left. Verse 3 will either be a PvP realm and a mess, a dungeon like Layer 2, and we all know how horrible that was, or open world like Layer 1. And then he goes on to say a bunch of other dumb stuff about how Reaconteur isn't going to save the game. Okay, so all of these points are pretty bad, right? Saying Deepwoken will never come back is pretty showing, and a majority of these comments were definitely made by people who either didn't play or don't remember the pre-Verse 2 drought, because it was literally the exact same as this current one, and people were saying the same stuff about Layer 2, and then it came out and like 80,000 people were on the game. Along with that, he also said, finally showing us a roadmap after 4 years of radio silence. The game's barely coming up on its 5-year anniversary, and it's not like they've had this roadmap ready. I'm willing to bet that they made the entire roadmap in the last month, alright? And actually, I can pretty much confirm that they did, because if you guys remember a video that I made talking about, you know, certain YouTubers' opinions, I was talking to Agamatsu, and this is like a few weeks ago. Agamatsu said that they were working on a roadmap which was going to end up with Verse 3 being the top of it, right? So they've been working on this roadmap for like 3 weeks, which I think is pretty telling of, you know, just the fact that the devs are actually going to be working on this because they haven't had the ideas for this long. And look, I know a lot of you are going to hear that and think, oh, the devs weren't working on the game. Oh, that's why the game's dying. But that's kind of a good thing for now, at least it's a good thing that they're back. Because the point I was making was not that the devs weren't working on the game, because yeah, they weren't working on the game, but that's also the good thing about it, because now they're working on the game again. They're actually doing stuff again, because half the dev team was sitting dormant while the other half made weeklies that did or didn't work and generally weren't that good. But now we've got the full dev team in cycle in production again, and that's where the big updates come from. Look, I rarely defend the devs, but a lot of the points you guys make are just not good, especially when Layer 3 was originally said by the developers to likely never come to the game. Which, by the way, is the same thing they said about Layer 2 on Deepwoken's release. So this is clearly a more recent revelation. Along with that, your point of Layer 3 being either a PvP realm, open world, or a dungeon is just kinda dumb because, like, yeah, those are quite literally the only options. Like, there's no alternative to all of those three. It's either a PvE realm, a PvP realm, or a dungeon. Or, sorry, open world, right? Yeah, that's literally all it could be. So what is the point here? It could be one of the 3 things that it could only be. And out of those 3, it's just like, it's not going to be a PvP realm. It's Layer 3. It's going to be PvE, and it's either going to be an open world or a dungeon. I'm thinking they're probably going to go open world with it. I don't have actual insider knowledge, but I think it would make more sense that way. And another thing, what do you mean we all know how bad Layer 2 was? What are you even talking about? Who dislikes Layer 2? Initially, people didn't care too much for the dungeon because it was different from Layer 1, and people thought it was going to be like a new endgame area for multiple players to explore. But it still remains a great update with great PvE content and major additions that are pretty well regarded. So I don't know what you mean by we all know how terrible Layer 2 was. What does that mean? Who knows that? Then yeah, we have the PvP arena theory. No, that's just not an option for Layer 3. If you knew anything about the lore, you'd just know this isn't an option, unless the devs want to just retcon or remove everything important from the game that's like in the lore regarding Layer 3 to make an entirely different thing, which they wouldn't do. They do a lot of lore retcons, but they're not going to retcon this. It's too big to be retconned. This is just a needlessly baseless and pessimistic comment, which is kind of just pulling out arguments from nowhere that don't make sense. But to be fair, a lot of the comments on that video think similar stuff, and they're all, in my opinion at least, equally baseless and needlessly pessimistic, because I genuinely can't believe that so many of you guys think Deepwoken is beyond saving, as if we haven't seen Roblox games come back from 0 players before, with massive numbers, or like Layer 2 wasn't the biggest update ever and Layer 3 is the most anticipated thing ever, like in the history of Deepwoken. People have been talking about Layer 3 for longer than Layer 2 has been out. That's how much people want Layer 3, because as far as lore goes, it is the coolest layer. Or well, it's also the most detailed, but you get the point. This isn't something they can just scrap like that. That's not going to happen. Regardless, I think a lot of you should just, for once, put faith into the development team. And before some of you call me a Deepwoken dick rider, fuck you. That's the third one that actually brings me out of the PG-13 rating. I'm very sorry. We are now just a little bit above, but next time I'll work on it. Fuck you. I'm already out of the rating, so I might as well, right? I've made 1,000 videos on how much I don't like how the devs work through things, and I'm completely honest in every video I make with my opinions. I have not once shilled for any dev teams for any game, okay? So, yeah, the one thing I'm saying is to trust in the developers, because without fail, every time I have put either trust or distrust in a decision with any development team, including Deepwoken, I have been right pretty much every time. Even at like my lowest, when I made a video talking about how Deepwoken would start to die because of the Archmage's development philosophy and all of the devs doing that, I was right. It's happened twice. But every time something major happens, it's going to happen, and I've talked about it being a good thing. All right, and I always face like critical, I don't know, critical thinking error from viewers at some point whenever I make like videos like this, or even videos on the opposite side, which are negative. But I haven't been wrong to this day, and I don't think I'm going to be wrong for a long time. So I hope you all enjoyed. Shoutouts to you two members of tier 2 or higher: Green, Brick, Goobka, Highcard, and Drizzy Drake Fan. Check out my Twitch and live channel. I love you all. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.